Welcome to the Working Genius podcast, where we discuss anything and everything related to the 6 types of working genius and how it impacts your work and your life. I'm Pat Lencioni, your host, joined by the full crew today. We've got Cody, Bo, Tracy on mic. We got Karen sitting next to me. We got Matt in studio producing. Cody, what's our topic today?
Working genius for students, finally.
That's right. It's out. It's launched. We're ready to go, and we can't wait to have this podcast to talk about this. But we're not just going to do a regular podcast. We're going to do a podcast as though we were talking to students. Now, we realize a whole 0.001% of our audience is teenagers. But that means there's probably one. What we're going to do is talk so that you could actually have a student listen to this, or more importantly, so you can understand how we go about explaining the power and the magnitude of this to students. All right? So we're going to be adjusting our vocabulary and our tone. No, we're not going to do that because kids hate that, by the way. But we're going to talk as though we were addressing young people, right? And so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I think what we should do is say, who is this for? Young people. And what would you think the age range would be? Like 15 to 20?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think technically we say 14 to 20.
And some of the reason for that is, as we'll get into this a little bit, we've discovered Working Genius 3 or 4 years ago, and very quickly on the heels of discovering this model, is we're like, wow, boy, don't we wish that we had known this earlier? And as we've certified people and taught teams about this, and approaching 1 million people have taken this assessment, so many of them have said, how can I get this in the hands of the teenager in my house, the college student that's trying to figure out their major? And so that is where this comes from, is a desire to help more people be able to discover this missing piece that really helps you be able to understand yourself and connect with others.
Yeah. And I just want to say this right from the beginning. I talk to young people about this all the time because I have a house full of kids. My youngest son just graduated from high school, and his buddies were at the house all the time. They talk to each other using this language. They say, hey, who's going to galvanize us? You got to galvanize us around this. Or we got to have some tenacity around this. It's really interesting. And then just last night, I was talking to my son's girlfriend on the phone, and she was asking me, hey, do you think my working genius suits my career aspirations? And we were having a conversation about why it was an ideal career for her and the things she might have to be aware of in terms of what might be hard. And so this really does apply. This is no force fit here at all. We are passionate about how young people can better understand themselves and how we can better understand them and work with them using Working Genius.
And Pat, I remember the first episode we did about Working Genius and how excited we were to get that out in the world. And in part, I remember my own excitement because it explained so much of who I am in my life and career, and even the frustrations that I've had in the past. So as we're talking about the Working Genius for students, I'm just as excited about our students are going to figure out who they are and where they fit in the world a lot faster than we ever did. If you take this and you understand, hey, here's the types of things I enjoy, because it almost is as if the whole education system is set up to help you discover that in some way. That's the goal, right? Is who am I? What should I be doing? What career should I be interested in? And this just gives you a head start on that in ways that I wish we had it when we were young.
As Karen was just saying to me, it gives them a leg up in life earlier. And all of us look back and say, if I had known this, I would have majored in something different in college. Now, I'm not going to regret that things worked out, but man, there was a lot of pain that I probably could have avoided. I would have taken a different job when I got out of college. I would have probably gone about my studying when I was a kid differently as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to shift right now into addressing this to students.
Great. So the cool thing, if you're listening to this, is somebody probably sent you this because they like Working Genius and you've maybe heard them talk about it. You can discover what your geniuses are. It takes about 10 minutes. You'll feel instant gratification by discovering what they are. But Pat, I wonder if you would briefly give an overview of what the 6 types are for anybody who's listening, who, whether they've heard about it in passing or has heard somebody talk about what is enablement, to just describe the model for our listeners.
All right. So you have 6 God-given talents. I mean, there are 6 God-given talents in the world when it comes to getting anything done, whether you are doing a class project, whether you're on a team in sports, whether you're planning a family vacation with your parents, whatever, all activities require 6 different skills. The problem is every individual only has 2 of those that they're really, really good at, that they love. It gives them joy and energy. And you really should know what those are, because when God gives us a gift, we want to understand it and use it. 2 other of those 6 would be what we call your working competencies. And that's something you're pretty good at, but you don't love it. It doesn't necessarily feed you, but you could do it. And we all have to do things we don't love. But then the last 2 would be called your working frustrations. And these are the things you hate doing. They drain you of joy and energy. It's why sometimes your parents can say, hey, I need you to do this. And you go, oh yeah, I don't mind doing that. And other times they say, I need you to do this. And you go, oh crap, I don't want to do that. I hate that. And your parents are probably mystified as to why sometimes you're cooperative and why sometimes you're not. And so are you. But usually it's because when we're asked to do things we really don't like, it's frustrating. And we've figured this out, and we all wish we had known this when we were kids, because it explains a lot. And it explains why I have 4 sons and why some of them liked school more than others, and why some of them did really well on certain kinds of assignments, why some of them picked certain majors when they went into college. And if you understand this, it can reduce a lot of stress in your life and have you better understand your friends, your parents, your teachers, and let them understand you. So this is great for coaches and team members. It's great for teachers and students. It's great for friends and certainly parents and their kids. So that's what this is. So should we go through the 6 types?
I love that. Let me just tell a quick story if I can. We got an email from Jason. Jason's a teenager. And like so many students, it feels like you are getting criticized for your weaknesses rather than seen for your strengths. And Jason said this. He said, it's so good to talk about the things I'm good at for once. So much of my life used to be spent trying to fix my failures. And the relief that Working Genius can give a student is to have language around their geniuses, but also understanding about your limitations that we all have. So, Pat, with that, why don't you tell us about the 6 types of work, the 6 working geniuses?
Well, and by the way, before you do that, I love Jason's comment, because I want to tell young people something that goes through their parents' mind. We look at our kids and we think, oh, they're really good at that and they're not very good at that. I think I better coach them up on how to be better at the things they're not good at, because I'm worried that in life they're going to struggle because of that. But that's really not the best way to do it. But we as parents, and I've done it for years, we do that with the best of intentions. But I like to think back Michael Jordan, the basketball player. He was really good at playing defense and dunking the basketball, going up and jumping and going by guys and dunking. He was not a great outside shooter. Well, according to the way most of us parent and even coach, the idea was they have to emphasize that he has to get better at shooting. And his coach said, no. We're not going to do that. We're going to let him lean into the things he's great at. And then he'll get better at shooting, not because he feels like he has to or he's being criticized, but because he knows he's good enough at what he's great at. And then he won't feel such pressure. And as young people, sometimes we just wish our teachers and our parents and our coaches would say, hey, you're awesome at that. You're not so great at that. If you want to get better at that other stuff, that's great. But don't forget, the most important thing is to understand what you're great at and to know that that's enough. Okay? So that's kind of what this is all about. And I wish I'd done a better job as a parent. I wish that had happened to me as a kid, but now we can try to help people do that. So here's the 6 types of working genius. Okay? And I'm talking to you as a student, whether you're 16 years old or 20 years old. I want you to think about these 6 different things. The first skill, if you will, the first genius, is called the genius of wonder. Now, if you have this genius, and 3 of my 4 sons have it, which is pretty crazy, nobody ever tells you it's a genius, because very few people see it in you or understand it. But people with the genius of wonder are the ones that say things like, gosh, I wonder if this is the best we could do. Maybe there's a better way. Why are things this way? Whether it's like, why does the teacher teach this way? How come we have to do this thing? I wonder if there's a better way to go about practice. Why do my friends act this way when we're in this situation? People with the genius of wonder ask the big questions, they ponder things, and they think about things deeply in the environment around them. And it's a really important skill set. It's actually the first genius in anything. Every great invention in the world, every great new idea came about because somebody said, maybe there's a better way. I wonder why we do this. So it's really important that people have the genius of wonder, realize it's a genius. You probably haven't been rewarded by your teachers and your parents and your coaches when you have this, because oftentimes they say, why are you asking these questions? Why don't you just get on with it? And yet, it's such an important thing in life. And if you're a student and you have this genius and you're listening to this, you might very well be thinking, oh, wow, so this isn't a defect? And we're saying, no, it's not.
Yeah, and wanderers, people with the genius of wonder, what they crave. If you're around a wonder, if you are a wonder, you understand this. They crave consideration. They want people to actually consider that what they're talking about and seeing has merit. But so often they're responded to by somebody saying, oh, who cares? Or can we just move on? And that is crushing to a genius. Each of the 6 types have something that they crave and something that they're crushed by. And we might not get a chance to go through all of those with each of the geniuses, but wonders in particular, it's so helpful to know what they're craving is just for their idea to be considered, what they see to be given consideration.
For somebody to say, that's a great question. I hadn't thought about that. Let's talk about it.
And I would just reiterate too, Pat, that even my own experience. So if you're listening to this as a student, the work environment, much like the education environment, is not designed necessarily, like the environment itself doesn't lend itself to all of these geniuses. So you might be like, if it's designed in a way, and you'll hear more as we go through the other geniuses, to reward not, or rather to punish wonder, for example, like don't ask that question, or it sounds like you're being disruptive, or you're not on board. The education environment isn't designed that way. I think that's sort of interesting to hear, right? It's like, it's not that you're not the right fit for the education environment. It's that it's designed in a different way. And this gives some language to understanding, like, all things created equal, my wonder is not as welcomed there.
Yes. And here's the thing though. The world needs wonder. And we hope that teachers and coaches and parents and everybody who deals with young people will understand how to appreciate this more. But if you're a wonderer, oftentimes you spend a lot of time up in your head. You're thinking about things and people don't even know what's going on inside your brain because you're just wondering and pondering. And my wife is a wonderer, and she as a child was always dreaming in class, always daydreaming. And if you're wondering, like, why does this class, do I have to know what the Pythagorean theorem is or a quadratic equation? When am I going to learn the quadratic equation, or use it, I should say, in my life? And if you're wondering about those things, now all students do a little bit, but if you're really caught up in that kind of stuff, that's okay. Now, I will say this. You gotta memorize it. You got to get through class because you got to do those things. But the fact that you're wondering that does not make you weird. It makes you who you are. So wonder is a great genius. Now, the second genius that comes after wonder is what's called the genius of invention. Now, this is, a lot of people think, well, these are the real geniuses because they invent things. No, it's just one of 6 geniuses. People with the genius of invention love to come up with new ideas out of nothing. They love to go, hey, I have a new idea. Or better yet, they hear somebody wonder and say, why are things like this? Or is there a better way? And they go, ooh, let me come up with a better way. They love to create out of nothing. They do it naturally. And it's one of my geniuses. I can't help myself. Even when I was a kid, and I'm a writer now, but I was not encouraged to be a writer really. And I didn't major in it in college, even though I probably would have loved to do that. I was writing stories and movies as a kid from the youngest age. I go back and look at all these stories I was coming up with and all these new ideas. It's always been part of who I am. But I'm going to tell you something. Most of our education system does not reward it. They're like, here's the syllabus. Here's what the class is about. Here's what you have to do. And it's like, hey, I have a better idea. Your coaches don't usually go, who wants to come up with a new offense? But the thing is, if you have that genius, just know it's real, it's good, and there's a place for it in life. It's very necessary.
Yeah, what this is showing is the 6 types of working genius might give you insight into why you start a project or task the way that you do. And a wanderer might start by wanting to look at all the potential and seeing what the problem is. An inventor might jump right to a blank slate to try to get solutions, because inventors, I'm a fellow inventor, we crave freedom. We crave the ability to have, just literally give me a blank slate, tell me what the fences are, and let me go do something. But it's crushing to us to be given limitations. We like kind of, there's something inside us that dies that says, you can't do that, or that's not the way that we do things around here. We want freedom.
And I would say this, even as you're hearing this, Pat, you laid it out that there's some that are geniuses and some that actually might be experiencing this as a frustration. I remember a mom writing in that was like, I figured out that my daughter, who is really good at school, whenever she was given an assignment to write a paper, she could never come up with an idea for the paper. Whereas an inventor who gets an assignment like write a paper on whatever you'd like, they're like, I have 5 ideas. And if you're hearing this, you're like, I don't have those ideas. That's not a defect. It's like, so what she did eventually, which I loved this story, was the mom had invention. So when the daughter got an assignment, they would go through some ideas together, pick one, and then she was great at writing the rest of the paper. So just like, I think as you're listening to this, it's not that, this helps us understand both from a strength standpoint when it's one of our geniuses and how to interpret it if it's one of our frustrations.
Yeah, and we like to say one person's trash is another person's treasure. I mean, we didn't make that up. That's an old saying. But the idea is when a teacher said to me, hey, you have an open assignment here, figure out whatever you want to write on and whatever you want to do, that sounds good. I would be like, this is my favorite thing in the world. Other students would go, oh no. Similarly, if they said, here's the science project, here's the rubrics, here's all the things you have to do, here's exactly how we want you to go around on it, and here's how I'm going to grade you on it, I would just be crushed. And other people would be like, yes, I know exactly what I need to do, and I can do it. Of course, then there's other people like, why am I doing a science project? But anyway, so don't think you're weird if you wonder that too. Okay, so W and I, wonder and invention, are the first 2 geniuses, and that's called ideation. That's where new ideas come from. It's not just the inventor, it's the person who asks a question. Then we move on to the 3rd genius, which is the genius of discernment. Okay, what this means is there are people that just have really gut feel. And this starts early in life. Tracy here on our podcast, she has discernment, which means she has just great judgment when you ask her a question about just about anything. And even as a kid, Tracy, this is true in your life, right?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone would come to me with their questions and I would love it. Just bring it on. That brought me the most joy in life, I would say.
And here's the thing about a person with discernment like Tracy. It's not that they're like an expert at something. People ask Tracy questions about everything like, hey, does this outfit look good? Hey, is this a good place to go on vacation? Hey, do you think I should take this job or this job this summer? And Tracy just has a good way of going, it's called intuition and instinct. Mm-hmm. And she just kind of listens to it and says, I don't think that would be very good for you. And that there's people in life that just have really good gut feel. And you can trust them. And usually in a group of friends, there's a few people that have really good common sense, even around things that they don't know a lot about. They just kind of understand how patterns work. And so people tend to rely on them like, hey, are we going to get in trouble for this? And they're like, no, I think this is fine. And that's like a person with great discernment.
So a person with discernment craves trust. So more than anything, I want someone to trust my judgment, my instincts, my assessment of things. That is so important for me. And what absolutely crushes me is when someone says to me, prove it. That is my kryptonite. I absolutely cannot stand that.
Yeah, that is so universal. Because when you have good discernment, you want people to rely on that. Mm-hmm. And when they're like, well, show me in detail and using data why you're right, it's like, oh, no, that's not how I think about things. Mm-hmm. And discernment and math don't necessarily go together. I mean, there's certain elements that because of math is like, I have to prove this out. And I did well in math, but I never really liked it because I really liked subjects where I could actually use my judgment. I always thought like, let's critique this thing about whether it's good or not let's just follow the rules. And again, though, that's because different people have different geniuses. So discernment comes next. The next one after discernment is called galvanizing. So somebody discerns an idea. Let's say a group of friends gets together and says, "Hey, we should start a business this summer." And somebody says, "Should we do something different this summer? I don't know. Maybe just getting regular jobs isn't so fun. Maybe we should do something else." And then the inventor goes, "Oh, I've got a great idea. We should start a lawnmower business because I've got a lawnmower and you've got a lawnmower and I know all these people. We should do that." And then the discerner goes, "Well, maybe we should not focus on just that. That's a good idea, but maybe we should focus on doing like putting in turf for people or something like that because people already have gardeners, but they don't have somebody to come on and do something else." That's discernment. Then they discern that idea. I know this sounds like a crazy idea. And then the galvanizer says, "Okay, I'm going to get people excited. I'm going to go to our friends and I'm going to pitch this idea. I'm going to do sales. I'm going to go door to door and convince people they need us to put in mulch or whatever it is we're going to do." And the galvanizers love that. They love to rally the troops, inspire people to act, and get people moving. And this is one of those geniuses that young people usually see in their friends. My son has a group of about 15 friends, and a couple of them are galvanizers, and they're usually the ones that go, "Come on, you guys, we got to do this." And that's how things get started. And they say that to one another. Who's going to galvanize this? And I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, Pat, I think of my own. So I have galvanizing as one of my geniuses. And I think back to the times in school where that would have been more, if I had taken this test, I would have known, oh, that's why I enjoy that. But even as we're talking about on sports teams or in the context of rallying a group of friends to maybe like go out to lunch that afternoon, anything that requires the idea of like getting a reaction and movement from people. So as we're talking about what galvanizers crave, there is this like confirmation or this reaction that you're trying to get. So if you're like in the example you gave, oh, this is a great idea. Let's get movement around this business that we want to create. And the thing that can crush a galvanizer is when they're in front of the room or in front of their friends trying to create momentum and they get no reaction, so disinterested or even a lack of anything. They'd prefer a fight, like let's fight about it, whether it's the right thing, rather than people just kind of sit there and shrug their shoulders and not do anything.
Exactly. And it's important to understand this. A lot of times young people that have galvanizing, people think they're natural leaders, and there's different ways to lead. My son was a captain on his lacrosse team this year, so he was one of the leaders, but he leads in a different way. He leads by example and by ideas. And other kids lead by, "I'm going to get in front of people and tell them what they have to do differently." And they're both valid. And I think when you're a coach, if you can understand not all of your kids on your team have galvanizing, but you can tap into their leadership in different ways, it's really important. But galvanizing is a really important skill. And there are some people that like to stand up in front of people and go, "Come on, you guys, let's do it." And that's galvanizing. It's a great genius. Okay, the next genius is called enablement. And I don't know if you ever heard the word enablement used in the wrong context, like enabling somebody to do drugs or alcohol, like because they just go along with it. This is a good enablement. This is enabling people to accomplish something important. And so we talked about the galvanizer saying, "Come on, you guys, let's do it." People with enablement are the ones that go, "I'm in. What do you want me to do? How can I help?" And this is not because they're just nice, and it's not because they don't have a backbone. It's because they love to come alongside and help others. They are so good on a team. They're that student who says, when the teacher says, "I need somebody to volunteer to help do this," they're the first one to go, "I'll do it." Or, "Who's going to stay after and help me clean up?" They're the ones that go, "I'll do it." And you know why they do it? It's not because they're a kiss ass. It's because they actually do love to say yes and to help other people. And when we don't understand what an important genius that is, sometimes we can take advantage of people that have enablement and not appreciate what they bring to a team or a class or a group of friends.
So, Pat, I have the genius of enablement. I have discernment and enablement. And what I want more than anything, what I crave as an enabler is someone to appreciate my efforts. And I'm not looking for recognition. I just want people to acknowledge what I've done and how I'm contributing, not in a credit type of way, just, "Hey, you're adding value." So that's what I crave. I crave that appreciation. And what drives me bananas is the fact that people can overlook it. They can take advantage of it. And that is crushing to an enabler.
Exactly. Now, when you're young and in school, your teachers tend to value this because you do what they tell you. And like, "Tracy is such a good girl. whenever I need somebody to clean up the classroom or sit and not talk to their neighbor, they respond to that very well. Unlike Cody.
That's my lowest. Enablement is my lowest.
And Cody and Bo and I, the three guys on this podcast, we don't have any enablement. Like that's in our frustration. That's our lowest area. So we don't tend to say, yes, I'll help just to do it. We want to ask questions and figure out the right way to help that we think is the right way. And that can be a really hard thing. And I was a soccer coach and a basketball coach and a football coach. I loved the kids that would just do what I said, but that doesn't mean the kids that struggled with that weren't nice kids. It's just they didn't have the same genius, and I might need to galvanize them a little harder or ask them for their opinions. And there's a lot of different ways to go about coaching. But if you're a teacher, a coach, or a parent, I will say it's easier when your kids have enablement, but that's not because they're nice. It's just because that makes them more likely to say, yeah, I'll do that.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to add one comment about enablement, which is enablement absolutely can be a leader. People with the genius of enablement can be a leader the same way any of the other types can. They can become CEOs and founders and high power, influential people. And I think sometimes there's a narrative, at least we can believe in our heads of, oh, my geniuses can discount me from some opportunity, which is just not true. We've seen influential leaders with every pairing possible in the working genius.
And you can be a team captain. You can be in any major. You can work in any field. You can do on any project, regardless of your genius. But you want to go about doing that in a way that honors and uses your genius. You know, the people with enablement are often the glue on a team. They're the thing that holds it together because they're the ones that go, yeah, I can help with that and I can help with that. And you're like, oh, I love them. So we need to appreciate them. Now, the last genius.
Oh, Pat, I would even say or as we're thinking about this in this context, the glue in a friend group. I think it plays the same way. They that comes across both in a relational way and in a work way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. I see this all the time. Okay, the last genius of these 6 is called tenacity. It's something that I don't have. Cody and Bo don't have it either. In fact, nobody on here has this, although Tracy, it's a little higher for you than others. Mm-hmm. And tenacity is people that just love to finish things. They love to push things across the finish line. They like to make sure that it gets done according to specifications, and that they can check it off the list and feel like they met their goals. Now, when you have this, that's something that always serves you in school because you're like, I have this assignment. I'm going to get it done. I'm never going to be too late on it. I'm going to finish it. But when you don't have it as a natural thing, it is one of my lowest areas of genius. It's one of my frustrations. And so doing all of my work was really painful for me. For other students, doing that, they have a list of things and like every day I'm going to get my homework done. I love it. I go home and I do my math homework, check it off. I do my Spanish, I check it off. And I use those too because those are the ones you got to do every day to stay on top of it. Whereas other people might be like, I'm not feeling very motivated by this. And so having tenacity, both in school and in life, is very easy to be rewarded for, but it's not necessarily something you can't be wildly successful without. And we just hope that every kid out there who doesn't have tenacity can say, that doesn't make me a bad person. Because for years, I thought I was a bad person because I didn't have tenacity.
I would say this, Pat, because this resonates so much with me and my experience in school is one thing I love about Working Genius, and I love that students are going to experience from this is not about, in some ways it is about your identity, meaning like, here's what you're wired to be naturally good at. But for the similar reasons like you, Pat, I thought I would make identity statements around my working frustrations. Like, I am a bad student. I believe that about myself because the homework didn't come as naturally. I look at other people who would turn things in on time and had an easier time with that. And I thought like, well, I guess I'm just not good at this student as an identity thing. And now I get to say, I don't have tenacity, which is not a character defect. It's something I know about myself. Mm-hmm. And the opposite is true. It's like a student that doesn't have invention might think, I am not creative. They're making an assessment about their identity like, oh, I'm not a creative person. And this allows us to say like, actually, I have the same amount of gifts as everybody else that's sitting in desks next to me. I just get to contribute in different ways. And I really think that that we talk a lot about the guilt and judgment piece, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but we judge ourselves or feel guilty for the things that we don't have.
And oftentimes when we do that, we discount the things we do have.
Mhm.
We say things like, oh yeah, I might be creative, but look at, I'm not responsible. Or, oh, I'm responsible, but I'm not very smart because I can't come up with new ideas. Oh, we got to quit doing that because God gives none of us all the geniuses. And he wants us to celebrate the ones we have and to celebrate the ones that others have that we don't have, and then to borrow from one another and to help one another, because life is a team sport. It really is. We need one another.
So just to close the loop on all those geniuses, the person in your life that has tenacity, or if you have tenacity, they crave clarity. They love to hear, hey, tell me what you need to get it done. They love those clear instructions, permission, and likewise, what is crushing to them is ambiguity. And so, Pat, we're kind of the opposite of that. You and I kind of love ambiguity. Again, give us the blank canvas and let me come up with my own rules. Whereas somebody else loves like, oh, tell me how to do it, how I can help you, how I can win, how I can get this across the finish line.
Yeah.
We're different. Thank goodness we need all the 6 types to be able to do work well.
And I just want to say to people like, so you'll have a parent. It could be a teacher or a coach, but let's say parent. When my kids came to me when they were young, I would always use my geniuses. And sometimes and I would always like, oh, they want my advice. And sometimes they were like, no, can you just do this for me? Or can you just listen to me? But because I'm an inventor discerner, and that's like the consummate problem solver, every time they came to me, I tried to solve their problem. And they're like, I don't have a problem. I just want you to listen. And so just know this, your parents do that. Your friends do that. Your teachers do that. Your coaches do that. Not because they're rejecting you, because they don't understand that what you really want, it does not always correspond to their genius. And they're just doing their best thinking that everybody wants what they're good at. Mm-hmm. So understand, if you're a student, that even well-intentioned parents, teachers, coaches are trying to help you, but they're probably just doing it in the way they would like to be helped, not necessarily in the way you do.
So Pat, we've gone through the 6 types. We've talked a little bit about guilt and judgment and what people crave. If you're talking to a student, which you've done dozens of times, that they've been in your house, what should they do next? What's the takeaway from this conversation?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that, because Karen sitting next to me here just wrote something out. I think what you need to do is know what you are, and then go sit down with the people that are important to you in your life and say, I want you to look at this. Like after you look at your report, make sure it sounds right, and usually it does, but really look at it, and then go to your parents, go to your friends, go to your teachers, go to your coaches and just go, hey, by the way, here's this really short thing. I want you to understand me so you understand why I do the things I do. And it is going to change the way they look at you. They will never look at you the same way again. Because the problem is in life, we say avoid guilt and judgment. People judge us because they don't understand what's going on behind our eyeballs. So let me give you an example from the world of work. We knew of a guy who was going to do what we call a performance review, which means at work, it's like sitting down to go over with your boss if you had a good year. It's like getting your report card, okay? And many people do it once a year, and it's nerve-wracking. It would be like going in and talking to your teacher about what your grade is going to be at the end of the year. So he was going in, and he knew he had a bad year. He knew he was getting all C's and D's, right? Because his work had not gone that well. He didn't know why. And then he did the working genius, and he said, oh, wow, this is so interesting. So he goes into the meeting with his boss the next day, and he shows him his working genius profile. And the guy looked at it for like 5 minutes and said, well, no wonder you're not doing very well. This is the wrong job for you. Oh, this totally makes sense now. And he said, hey, we have another job in the organization that would be really good for your geniuses. And the guy said he got promoted rather than getting fired because finally they understood him. And so many times our teachers, coaches, parents are assuming things about us because they just don't know how we're wired. I mean, even with the best of intentions, like I had 4 boys, I didn't know what their working geniuses were. When we figured this out 3 years ago, I parent them differently now. My youngest son is a WI, which means he's a creative dreamer. He's also really introverted, so we never know what's going on behind the scenes. Well, when he comes to me and shows me his grades, and he does pretty darn well, but he does well in spite of the fact that following through on assignments and that's just not natural to him. And now instead of me going, you got to stay on top of this more, I can go, hey, he's going to get B+s And that's great for him because really he's looking for to do. And as parents, we always think, well, everybody has to get an A in everything. And nobody gets an A in everything. And if you're trying to get an A in everything, you're probably going to be so riddled by guilt and anxiety, and that's going to come out later. So as a parent, knowing who he is, I can parent him knowing what's going on. So share this with people. Share it with your friends because they're going to go, oh, we thought you didn't get on board because you were always being difficult, but you don't have enablement. So no wonder that's what's going on. So anyway, that's what I would say is do this assessment. It takes 10 minutes. You will understand it. We rewrote the questions for students and with the help of students. And you will take this and you will look at the results and share it with others, and it will change your relationships.
Yeah, I think that you are absolutely going to feel more, you're going to understand yourself better in 10 minutes by taking the assessment and just getting better language around who you are and what frustrates you. I think that you're going to feel more confident at school. You're going to feel more ease about the future. But it's really when you share it with somebody else that you go from feeling misunderstood to really feeling more known by the people around you. Again, friends, family, coaches, teachers, that you can say, here's a little bit about me, and share the assessment with them. And then you'll be able to understand them better too. Then you'll actually find that you will experience less resistance in your relationships and conversations when you understand each other better.
Right. Most people want to understand us. They just don't know how. Imagine going to your coach and saying, hey, coach, I have invention and discernment. Do you think we could talk about the game plan coming up this week? Because I have some ideas. And instead of him going or her going, oh, you're just trying to interfere in the you're a player on the team. You shouldn't be doing this. They're going to go, oh, wow. You mean if I did that, you would feel even more engaged. You'd probably be able to add value. I want to honor you. And they're going to say, yeah, let's take 5 minutes to talk about this or 10 minutes. And you're going to feel completely different about that as opposed to being shut up and just do what you're told. And this is true in professional sports too. You know, there's coaches that use this stuff in professional sports. And if you understand your players, you know which ones are probably just going to do what's asked of them and they'll always be on time. And the one that's probably like, could I be involved in the game planning? We're all different. So this isn't just about students, but we've done this so that you can have that benefit too.
You know, Pat, you talked about the first step, find 1, 2, 3 people in your sphere, a friend, a teacher, a coach, and share the results with them. The other piece that as we're having this conversation is like, also let this shape some of the internal dialogue you have. You know, I know that when I was a student, I just felt like my internal dialogue was, oh, I'm not good at that thing. And it took me a while to even understand what my gifts were. And so I think this could go a long way for the internal dialogue to say, hey, I know what I'm really good at, and I know how I contribute in my classroom and on teams and in my friend group, and I'm going to keep doing those things. And yeah, maybe I don't have XYZ genius, whichever one that tends to be. I think a lot of people are out there beating themselves up about the way they're wired. And so just leaning into how it will shape the external relationships, but even relieve yourself of any angst, worry, or guilt that you feel yourself, because nobody has all 6, you know? And like you said, Pat, I think this is worth repeating is the other thing this will do for students is early on in your life, you'll figure out that what Pat said is true. Life is a team sport. You need other people. You need friends and family members to help you out, eventually coworkers. So nobody has all 6 geniuses. And I think we can give ourselves some grace around how we think about ourselves in our own internal dialogue.
I love that you just said that. The other thing is we realize that going too long is something that, you know, we always had a hard time in class. So we're at about 39 minutes into this. This is about the length of a class session. So we're going to wrap this up now, but please dive into this and feel free to share with us how this helped you, because that's why we're doing this. We wanted to help you. So I think that's all we need to say today. Working Genius for students, 10 minutes of your time. Every parent out there, every teacher would be glad to purchase one of these for you because it can change your life. And it's about the cost of 2 cups of coffee, I think, based on the coffee shops that I go to these days. Okay. All righty, everybody. Thanks for listening. Whether you're a student, a parent, a teacher, a coach, we hope this has been helpful. And we are really excited to see how this is going to impact the lives of students everywhere. So thanks for being with us, and God bless you.